looking, cute girl with a preppy vibe. Came to the spot with a friend of mine, she caught my eye. From the beginning, I was hooked, I can't tell a lie. Fresh, dressed and fly, I respect her mind. Some dude trying to impress, but looking goofy at the same time. He bugging, she looking, I'm going for mine. Confidently I approach with that eye-to-eye contact. She smiling while
Hey y'all, welcome to the check-in. Yes. Y'all, we have a lot to talk about today. We are going to get into a serious matter where the New York Times did an article saying that Pete Hegseth removed 4 officers from the one-star generals list. So the conflict is, okay, does he have the right to do that in his position, you know? And the answer that I've seen thus far is that he does not. And so what's interesting is that 2 of the 4 were black male and then 2 were women. So now they're wondering, okay, so what's really going on here? Because, he removed General Brown when he first got into his position. And he also removed the first general officer who led the Navy as well. I forgot her name, but I'll get that information for you. But yeah, so what do we think about this? So we're going to go ahead and get into the article and everything. But first up, we're going to look at an interview where the person who wrote the article had some things to say. Okay, let's get into that.
Secretary Pete Hegseth is facing increased scrutiny over a highly unusual decision to block the promotion of 4 Army officers. Senior military officials tell the New York Times Hegseth stopped 2 black officers and 2 female officers from becoming one-star generals. In a statement to the Times, the Pentagon did not directly address Hegseth's decision, but said, quote, military promotions are given to those who have earned them. Joining me now is Greg Jaffe, one of the reporters behind that piece. Welcome to you, Greg. What more can you tell us about Hegseth's decision and the officers who were targeted?
So the main thing is that this is just really highly unusual, that the Army and Secretary Hegseth have been sort of bickering over this or arguing over this. Bickering's not the right word, for months now. It's not clear that Secretary Hegseth has the legal authority to pull these names off the list. Those are the main things, I think.
Okay, so can anything be done to fight it? And I remember reading something that he has to approve, or typically the defense secretary has to approve the entire list or not approve the entire list. Is that true? And in this case, does it apply?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's either an up or down on the entire list. And the reason is because the process is supposed to be apolitical. And so the idea is, in doing it that way, it takes politics out. The list has now gone to the White House, which will review it, and then it will go to the Senate. So I think the main chance to reverse this is possibly in the Senate, which could take a position that, this process was improper and then kick it back to the Pentagon.
So, Greg, you also report about a heated conversation between Hegseth's chief of staff, that's Ricky Burria, and Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll. It was last summer, and it was about a separate promotion. 3 current and former defense and administration officials familiar with the exchange say Burria said President Trump would not want to stand next to a black female officer at military events. Burria, for his part, has called the account of that interaction false. But what does this signal to you about the culture at the Pentagon that Hegseth and top DOD officials are trying to create?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the right word, culture, or sort of command climate. I think there's a lot of confusion and uncertainty about that has grown out of sort of Hegseth's DEI, anti-DEI push. And his writings, both before he became secretary and his speeches since, that people were improperly promoted because of race or gender. And so kind of nobody knows where the line is, or nobody completely seems to understand what the standard is. And, it's worth noting the language in his book on this topic was exceptionally harsh. He called, many of the generals promoted under Secretary Lloyd Austin and President Biden, he described them as, cowards hiding under their stars and whores to wokesters. So, we put that language out there. I think it has a real chilling effect on people.
Oh, yeah. Well, on top of that, Hegseth has repeatedly said he wants to cut out woke from the military and make it all merit-based. But now the chairman and vice chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, all 5 service chiefs and 9 of the 10 top commanders, Greg, they're white men. So what impact does that have on our military and service members?
Well, I think it's worth noting too that the military, is around 40 to 45%, people of color. And so it's a very diverse military. Hegseth likes to say that diversity is our strength is the dumbest phrase that's ever been written about the military or spoken about the military. He says unity is our strength, but they're not mutually exclusive, I don't think. But so I think it says a lot to those folks. Hey, do I have a fair chance to rise in this system? A lot of people go to the military because they believe it's a meritocracy and that they'll be judged on their performance. And I think all of this infighting, all of this rhetoric causes people to question whether that's accurate.
Gotta say, I wish you could see my notes I marked up here. It's a pretty stunning report. There are yellow highlights all throughout this thing, so I recommend folks read it. Greg, thank you so much.
Okay, y'all. So we got to hear directly from one of the writers of the article. So what do you guys think so far? Now I'm looking at the article here on my tablet. I'm gonna read a couple of areas for you guys. And it says that Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island said Mr. Hegseth's intervention in a Army promotion matter violated rules that promotions in the military services should be based on individual merit and demonstrated performance. After a service board approves a list of colonels to be promoted to general, the defense secretary is not supposed to intervene, military officials say. Okay. Then they say that the Secretary of War here has the ability to either approve the list as a whole or disapprove the list as a whole. And apparently, as you guys heard, he was going back and forth with the Army Secretary to remove the 4 names. But I guess he didn't make any ground with that, so he unilaterally removed them himself, is what the article is saying. So what do you all think about that? Okay. And so apparently on Friday, Mr. Hegseth announced that President Trump had approved his new list of 29 Army colonels to be promoted. So it's now at the Senate. So the Senate now has the ability to either approve the list as is, or they can kick it back to the Department of War. So what do you guys think? Now, I just did a poll here, and so far, I'm seeing that you guys are saying that um 38% is saying that Hegseth has the ability to remove the military from the list of the 1-star general promotion list. Um 33% said that's out of bounds. And then right now 26% is saying you can't be serious. I was so surprised when I saw this article. So I was definitely surprised that this was even a topic. And we'll hear eventually about how this lady she was being questioned. She became the general officer for the military district of Washington. There was concern about her getting that role, I guess last year. I didn't know anything about that. First time hearing it was today. But yes, we're going to get into that as we continue moving on. And like they said in the video here, that currently the chairman and the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, all 5 service secretary, I'm sorry, yeah, all 5 service chiefs and 9 of the military's 10 combatant commanders are white men. But you have 43% people of color that make up the military. So that's an interesting tidbit, right? So let me see what you guys are saying here in the in this in the comments here. So we have let me get this right here. We have Richard Moorhead saying many veterans are not even citizens. Immigrants get citizenship posthumously. And where them fans at? Where them fans at? Looking lady, pick a lane. I'm not sure what he's talking about. He must be a troll. But welcome to the live stream, and I appreciate the engagement in the chat here. We have Johnny Vega here. Welcome, saying, "Yep, serve in the U.S. military, get papered up." Let's see. He says that's why a female from Washington. Okay. We have Stewart 2004 here. Welcome to the check-in, saying you follow the laws on the books. If you don't like the laws, either change them or stop crying about it. True. You should follow the laws in the books. I agree 100%. And what they're saying here is that the laws aren't being followed, is what they're saying in the article. So yes. Let's see. We have Mr. Lou, you know it here. Thank you for being here. If you are new here, please feel free to like the live stream, push me out in the algorithm. We tend to react to different things in the news, all those good things. Feel free to subscribe and support the channel. It is free. Okay, we have Mr. High Homestead here saying no kings. They had those no kings protests yesterday. So we're going to go ahead and look into the next video where there's a little bit more analysis going on in regards to what was in that article and all that stuff. Let's get into it.
You may remember a year ago when, shortly after returning to the White House, Donald Trump fired several high-ranking military service members who, let's say, just happened to be black and women. They included the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that's a big deal, the chief of naval operations, and the U.S. representative to NATO. There was no reason to think any of them had done anything wrong with their duties.
Right.
Well, today, the New York Times is out with explosive new reporting that gives a little insight into the decisions being made at the Pentagon. The Times reports that this month, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is, quote, unilaterally blocking the promotion of 4 Army officers to be one-star generals, something it's not even clear he has the legal authority to do. It's really, really irregular. The Times explained that 2 of the officers targeted by Hegseth are black and 2 are women. They all had, quote, decades-long records of exemplary service. But Hegseth removed them from a promotion list that consists of about 3 dozen officers, most of whom are white men.
Okay.
The Times is reporting, based on interviews with 11 current and former military officials, 3 of them told the Times about a dust-up last summer. Listen to this. It was between Hegseth's chief of staff, Ricky Burria, and the Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll. Now, the Times reports, quote, that Burria chastised the Army Secretary for selecting Major General Antoinette Gant, a combat engineer who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, to take command of the military district of Washington, located there in D.C. Burria told Driscoll that President Trump would not want to stand next to a black female officer at military events.
Let me pause right there. Did you guys just hear what they said? That allegedly, the person said that President Trump would not want to stand next to a black female general officer at events. What do you all think about that? If that was true, what do you think? I'm alleging it. I wasn't there. I'm not sure, but that is what they put in this news article. Okay. So we had Johnny Vega asking me who was blocking them higher-ranking generals. Pete Hegseth is. So what they're saying is that Pete Hegseth removed these colonels, 2 black men and 2 women from the list, is what happened. So, and what they're saying is that he has the right to either approve the entire list or disapprove the entire list, not to take people off the list and then send it forward to the president. So the list is currently now at the Senate. They're actually on recess right now for the spring and for Easter break. So they have the opportunity to reject the list and send it back to the Department of War, or they can approve it. So I guess we'll see what happens with that. But my question to you guys is that if this is correct, what they're saying here, do you really believe that Trump said that he did not want to be standing next to a black general at events? What do you guys think about that? Let's get into it.
I'm going to repeat that. According to the Times, the chief of staff to the Secretary of Defense told the Secretary of the Army that the President of the United States would not want to stand next to a black woman officer at military events. Now, in that one case last year, the Times reports that Driscoll argued with Burria that, quote, the president is not a racist or sexist. Let you be the judge of that. But General Grant did ultimately get the promotion. The same right now cannot be said for the other 4 this month. Kyle Bibby served as a Marine Corps infantry captain in Afghanistan, as political partner with Truman National Security Project. He's a co-founder and co-CEO of the Black Veterans Project. April Ryan's the longest-serving Black White House correspondent, who's now at the Contrarian, where she hosts The Tea with April Ryan, and they both join me now. Kyle, since I have you here and you yourself are a veteran, I have to say, I mean, I think the threshold for being shocked is very high these days. I found that quote almost knocked me out of my chair. What's your reaction to it?
Well, I think a lot of people are going to be obviously shocked, but not necessarily surprised, as they say. If you look at this history that we've had at this administration, I mean, you opened with the firing of General Brown, Admiral Franchetti. There was the controversy around Black history being removed from the DoD websites. After some uproar, they silently put it back.
They scrubbed Jackie Robinson, of all people, and his service off the DoD website.
Yeah, so, you know, there was the controversy regarding Christian nationalist religious leaders being brought to speak to the troops. I think that it's a very clear message that's being sent here to service members, to people who maybe are thinking of joining the military, that Black service members are not welcome, that women are not welcome. The rules and changes to expel gay and transgender service members, you know, it is a very clear message that this is a military that's going to be led by a white nationalist movement.
April Ryan, having covered this administration and having been the target of some of the president's vitriol and venom at times, your reaction to this reporting from the Times?
It's great reporting, but there is hypocrisy from this administration. If we just look back a couple of weeks ago, Condoleezza Rice, who at one time happened to be then President George W. Bush's one of his chief confidants and Secretary of State, and also in the intelligence community, happened to be at the White House recently. And she was in the East Room. And current President Donald Trump pulled her to the side, and they walked back down the red carpet back to the elevator, and to talk. And this is around the time of the beginning of the war with Iran. So there's hypocrisy there. And then also think about this as Hegseth doesn't want to deal with DEI. Think about who has been in the military from almost the inception of this nation when we were fighting wars. It's enslaved Africans. You cannot erase that history. And Truman was the first president to officially integrate the wars. African Americans have been fighting in U.S. wars since before the Civil War. So they need to get their history right and figure out what they're going to do, because you can't change this history. The facts are the facts.
You know, it's striking to me, and I don't want to overstate the case about the U.S. Armed Forces, but it does strike me that in a country that can be very segregated in many ways, if you just look at like the demographics we have in residential segregation, education, that, to April's point, you know, it was one of the first institutions to be desegregated in the United States. It was one of the early civil rights fights in the 20th century, before the sort of peak of that civil rights, those desegregation fights in the 50s and 60s. That it also has been kind of a model of pluralism and integration and sort of multiracial coming together, and to watch what Pete Hegseth is doing to it just seems so anathema to them.
Yeah, you know, I think there's that old saying, accusations are confessions. You know, Pete Hegseth comes into this saying, oh, he's going to depoliticize the military. It's the exact opposite of what these people are doing. They are, again, interested in a white nationalist project. And unfortunately, you know, it really is... it undermines really the centerpiece of military history. As you said, one of the first institutions to desegregate U.S. military. People generally view the military as a place where meritocracy and you know, supporting one another is very important for our role, because our lives may depend on the people next to us. And we've always been a reflection of this country. So, you know, to implement what we've been calling this sort of like neo-segregationist movement within the military and within our broader society, it really serves not just as a slap in the face of people who served, but also ultimately makes us less safe. We don't have a safe democracy without a representative military.
Well, and also, April, I mean, your point there about the sort of, you know, they have couched everything as, quote, DEI and wokeness and on and on and on. I mean, I think it doesn't really even pass the sniff test or laugh test when you're talking about like promotions to one-star general. It just that is not what's going on here, quite clearly. It's not. But it seems to me that they have used that rhetoric to basically smuggle in what is just very old-fashioned discrimination, like not giving someone a promotion because they're black or a woman is just a straightforward violation of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, illegal under statute, but also just the oldest thing in the book. It's not, there's nothing newfangled about it.
Right. Chris, I can't help but think, just hours before we go into the No King's Day, this is once again an effort to gin up the base. But I also think about the fact that this is something that can quell the morale or quench the morale, let's say that, of Black service members. What is it? How many? What's the percentage of Black service members in the infantry? About 40%. If I were Black and hear that, I would say, well, why am I here? I can't, there's no room to rise. And I can't also help but think about the late, great General Colin Powell, who believed in affirmative action. He was a Republican. Many Republicans didn't agree, but he understood the basis of what the military was founded on. And he kept promoting that. And then you have Hegseth, who is anti-woke, anti-DEI. This administration is making it clear who they support and who they don't, but they're not standing with what has happened in the Republican Party and what this country has done when it comes to the military. Who would want to support and fight in the military seriously when, if you are a minority, thinking that you have no room to rise to greater heights?
Yeah, that point, I mean, we're having this conversation as U.S. members are being deployed, service members are headed to the Gulf for a possible to be sent into a extremely dangerous ground invasion of Iran. And the folks that are on those transports are Black and white and Latino and Asian and gay and straight and all the sort of panoply of American life. And this is something they're going to be reading on their phones as they head towards that danger.
Yeah, it's a real slap in the face, to think that you would be sent downrange on a mission, another potentially endless war in the Middle East with no defined strategy or goals. And then you're going to come back to the United States and have Pete Hegseth cherry pick your promotion after your peers go through a robust process of determining whether or not you're worthy of that rank. It's a slap in the face. And quite frankly, it's going to undermine the morale of the troops, I'm sure.
Kyle.
Okay, so I just want to kind of clear up a couple things. Now, I saw where, let me find the comment, where Stewart 2004 said that Hegseth took DEI out of the military. Remember, he said he was going to do it day one. Yes, he did. As a matter of fact, he said things such as, okay, Mr. Hegseth has repeatedly said that he is determined to change a culture corrupted by foolish, reckless, and woke leaders from previous administrations. But his heavy scrutiny, especially of female and minority officers, is eroding confidence in a promotion system that's supposed to be apolitical and merit-based, his critics have said. Now, DEI is not about putting people that are incompetent into positions. It's about giving people who normally do not get opportunities to be in these positions the opportunity to be considered. Okay, that's what it's about, because you have a lot of people who are minority, who are, minority in terms of race, minority in terms of their gender, that are qualified. But a lot of times those people don't get the opportunity to get in these roles. So they wanted to ensure that you had a representative amount of people to be considered for those opportunities, and that it wasn't going to always be, just the Caucasian male. Okay. So that's kind of what that was about. Now, when I was supervising in one of my roles, I inherited a organization that was primarily white men. Yeah, primarily white men. And I was their supervisor. Okay. And so yeah, I think I had a couple of ladies. Yeah, I had a couple of ladies that were white as well. Yeah, but they ended up moving on or whatever. But when I started hiring, I did not attempt to like select people based off of race. I selected people based off of their ability to get the work done. You know what I'm saying? So when I put out my job positions, my announcements, if you will, I looked at the candidates. I did interviews over the phone. I didn't see them, and I made selections. And by the time I left that office, I had what you would call the United Nations. I had people that were of different ages, people of different backgrounds, engineers, planners, environmentalists. They were different genders, all the things. I had a very different organization when I left than when I arrived, because I gave a fair look. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. You know what I'm saying? So it's not hard to get diversity in your organization. And to me, it worked out well because it was good having people who had different backgrounds and different experiences to make a well-rounded team. And to me, that's really what DEI was about. But some people look at it differently and look at it wrong, in my opinion. So what are you guys saying here in the chat? So we have Keep Skating saying, hello, lady. How you doing, Keep Skating? Welcome to the check-in. We have Craftsman saying it's the military. It's not about color. It was about female. Okay. We have Johnny Vega saying that's you. Not everyone has good morals like you. Thank you, Johnny. You're right, because I really don't care about anybody's race, gender, age, background. All I care about is can you get this work done and on time. Now I cared about you as a person, okay? But when it came to who I was looking for, I needed people who could produce and that could beat these schedules. That was my main thing. I was all about competence. Okay. I could care less about the other stuff. Okay. Because I had spent enough time having incompetent people who I had to stay late at work, getting their work done while they sitting at home and I'm not getting paid overtime. Okay. So I had to correct that. You see what I'm saying? But yeah. What else we got here? We got Patrick, Chris 8390. Welcome to the check-in. Saying Trump, Pinocchio, Pinocchio. Oh my goodness, y'all. Let's see. We had Johnny Vegas saying, but unfortunately, underqualified DEI is what we got out of that process. And I believe that. I mean, I do think in some instances people did promote their buddies, but I mean that's been something going on for end of time. At the first place I worked at back in 2004 through 2006, I was down in Georgia, and I saw where a lot of people who worked there would not retire until they got their kids out there working with them. Okay, it was all about them bringing on their family, and once they got their family into a quote unquote good job, then they might retire. So it would be you could see generations of people working at this place because they got all their family on there with them, making that good money. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, people do that. That's nothing that's new. People bring on folks all the time. I've seen people be brought on that, are not competent. And I'm like, why do they hire this person? Because they friends. A lot of things happen outside of the office that helps in the office when it comes to people, getting these jobs. Now, I am not a person that can just get by with our friendly situations. I have to actually be competent and knowledgeable in what I need to do. Okay, because I'm not going to get those kind of passes. That's my reality. Okay, so yeah, I understand what you guys are saying about some of this. Um, we got we got Bash Buddies who talking about that forehead is so massive, bruh. I got a lot of knowledge up here. A lot of knowledge up in this forehead, baby. But welcome to the check-in, okay? We have, let's see, Craftsman saying it's very unusual to put women in the front line. It's a small percentage. Okay, well, I'll tell you this. I had a friend, his wife is a retired colonel, and she would be out there not as on the front line, she was a medical doctor. She would be out there tending to the injured, um, out there doing those operations and contingencies. So she wasn't on the front line per se, but she was out there tending to the people who was out there on the front line, and she saw a lot. Okay, she got PTSD to this day. All right. So we're going to go ahead on and we're going to see what this retired four-star general had to say about what's going on with this promotion situation. Let's get into it.
General, I have to ask you about some shocking reporting in the New York Times today that Hegseth has struck 2 black and 2 female officers from a possible 1-star general promotion. This is a highly unusual move, they report, that has prompted some senior military officials to question whether the officers are being singled out because of their race and or their gender. And 2 of the officers, again, they're black women. And as this comes at a time when the majority of the leadership is, of course, still white men, there are some pretty stunning quotes in this piece, including allegations that one aide directly said that the president wouldn't want to be standing next to a black female military leader when speaking, when presenting. I'm sure you've seen this, and I guess I want your reaction to what this represents about the leadership at the Pentagon, but also what this could do to the morale, the functioning of the military at such a crucial time.
Well, this is nothing new. This has been going on since the day Trump was sworn in. There's been a very direct attack on the armed forces in general and their senior leadership over the notion that they're woke, that promotions are not based on merit, that the military actions were not sufficiently muscular. And I hate to say this, but Hegseth in some ways looks like a comic book tough guy. And so I think increasingly inside the Pentagon, there's an element of chaos and hysteria to decision making.
Okay, so that's what he had to say regarding what's going on with these promotions being blocked by Hegseth. So yes, y'all. Let's see, what do we have here in the chat? I gave a couple of comments, a couple of surveys here. So I said, should Hegseth have the military? Should Hegseth have the ability to remove military members from the one-star general promotion list? 37% says nope, that's out of bounds. 35% said yes, he's Secretary of War, and 20% said you can't be serious. So yes, y'all. According to what they have found so far, he doesn't have the ability to do that. He can approve the list in its entirety, or he can disapprove the list in its entirety. He cannot remove names. Is what they have found thus far, and what can and cannot be done. And like I mentioned, he was working with the Army secretary trying to get him to remove those 4 names, and the gentleman wouldn't do it. He did it unilaterally. So now they're trying to figure out, okay, can he do this? Is it illegal? Like, what's the deal? But I guess we'll have to keep an eye out on that resolution, okay? Then the other question I asked you guys was, do you believe that Trump would not want to stand next to a black female general officer at events? So yes, as you guys heard in the video with the person who wrote the article, he was saying that someone was told that Trump did not want to be standing next to a black general officer that's female at events. So I asked you guys what your thoughts were on that. Did you believe that or not? 62% said yes, not surprised. 22% say what now? And then 60%, of course, he would have an issue. Okay, that's what we have here in the poll. Let's see, we have Mr. KMCK Matt Greer here saying you don't sound competent or knowledgeable. And sir, why are you here? We have Prasmus saying, what are they talking about as a percentage? There's more in Spanish join the military at a higher number. They're saying that 43% of the military to date is people of color, which Spanish would be considered of color, is what they were saying. We got Matt Greer saying, I just started. I was hoping I'd see different. No hate here. I love you, sis. Okay. Thank you for being here at the check-in. We had Johnny Baker here saying, we're the okay. Well, those are the only ones singled out. Who else is on that list? I feel like we're only hearing half info. So, Johnny Baker, great question. So, what has been identified now? There's 36, 3 dozen names on the list, and out of that, 4 were removed. 2 black men and 2 females that were removed. The rest of the people on the list got moved forward. Trump approved the list, and now it's sitting at the Senate. That's what they have provided right now. And the list was primarily white male. That's what they have put out here to date on this list, and they only said that 4 were removed. So yeah, they're saying here like, okay, Mr. Hegseth have been pressing senior Army leaders, including Army Secretary Daniel P. Driscoll, for months, to remove the officers' names, military officials said. But Mr. Driscoll, citing the officers' decades-long records of service, had repeatedly refused. So the service secretary would not remove the names because those people had exemplary service records. Okay, so he wasn't going to remove them arbitrarily, which makes sense. He stood on business. So when he would not remove them, according to the article, Hegseth did. Yeah. Then they mentioned that let me go here, that Mr. Hegseth's chief of staff, Ricky Buria, had chastised the Army Secretary for selecting Major General Antoinette Gant, a combat engineer who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, to take command of the military district of Washington, and said 3 current and former defense and administration officials were familiar with the exchange. The command provides security and performs ceremonial duties in the nation's capital, and its commander often appears alongside the president at Arlington National Cemetery. So this person was able to be moved forward in her role. Okay. So apparently, Mr. Heggs' office retreated on the General Gant situation, and she began serving in her position last summer. That's 2025, and she was recently promoted to 2-star rank earlier this month. Okay. So now, according to this article, someone is saying that Mr. Burrier, who was the chief of staff for Hegseth, is saying that the interaction with Mr. Driscoll was completely false, and says that whoever placed this made-up story is clearly trying to sow division among our ranks in the department and the administration. He wrote in a text message. It's not going to work, and it will never work when this department is led by clear-eyed, mission-driven leaders unfazed by fake Washington gossip. Okay? The Pentagon did not address Mr. Heggs' decision to strike the 4 officers from the promotion list or respond to questions about Mr. Burry's interaction with Mr. Driscoll. And according to Sean Purnell, the department's chief spokesman, he said that under Secretary Heggs, military promotions are given to those who have earned them. Okay, so what happens is that basically they're still saying that was he able to remove those 4 names? Was that legitimate? And from what they're saying here, he doesn't have the ability to do that, but he did. So we're going to find out if that's going to stand. Let's see. We have K. Matt Grierson. I would hope that you be more open to subjective observations. If you want to remain in a vacuum, that's on you. I'll keep praying for you, and I hope you do the same for me. Mr. K. Matt Greer, I really don't understand why you're writing this to me, because I saw your comment, and like I said, thank you for being here. I feel no ways about your comment at all, sir. You don't need to pray for me because I don't know who you pray to. And I'm not in a vacuum. I'm a platform here where I'm objective, okay? And I allow people to come in the chat here and give their opinion. So that's what we do here. And if you stick around, which you do not have to do that, sir, then you would see that. But I don't want anybody to be here that doesn't want to be, okay? So I don't need the comments. I'm good over here. I have no problem with you hanging out in the chat, or you can leave. The choice is yours, sir. Have a blessed day. All right, so we have Johnny Vega saying, no, not accurately represented. Okay. Then we have Craftsman saying, if you go by population and percentage, white people is not overrepresented. Okay. So if they're saying that 43% of the if they're saying, Mr. Craftsman, that 43% of the military is people of color, and they just listed that the majority of the people in leadership positions are primarily white male. I don't see how you can say that the white people percentage is not overrepresented. If you're saying that almost half of your population in the military is of color, then you would expect that you would have maybe close to half of your senior leaders, um, or maybe 25%, or at least one perhaps of color, instead of the majority being white men. So I'm not sure how you do your math here, sir. Now, I'm an engineer by degree, so I'm pretty good at math and all that good stuff. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Okay. Let's see. We have Johnny Vega saying not a good look. Craftsman saying American Spanish are very patriotic. Much love. They joined the military. Okay. We have Johnny Vega saying we're the only ones. singled out. Who else is on that list? I feel like we are only hearing half info. Like I said, the majority was white male, and they mentioned the 4 that was removed, the 2 black officers that were male, and then 2 females. Let's see. We had Johnny Vega saying your opinions are pretty valid. I think so. Thank you. I think so too. I'm just making comments as observations. I mean, that's just what I'm here to do. I have no agenda in any of this, but yeah, some people just look for attention, for lack of a better phrase. Then we have Deborah saying exactly, we have Craftsman saying we are 65% of the population. So you're talking about of the United States of America. So they said that 43% of the military population is people of color. So we're talking about the military population, sir, not the population of America. That's the difference. Okay. So we have Kaka Pants, welcome to the check-in, saying America will always do what America does because it always has. And you probably own something with that. Okay. So we're gonna move forward with our dialogue here. So as you guys know, the DHS shutdown is still ongoing. I think we're on like what, the 4th week? I forgot, y'all. It's a lot. So what I read is that President Trump signed an executive order. Okay, and so he's said that he's directing DHS to pay the TSA agents, right? But we still have the Senate and the House on spring recess, and they're blocking this, not supporting that. So we don't have anything concrete as far as like an actual CR for this situation. Okay, so we're gonna check this out, and that'll be our update on that. Let's keep it going.
Congress has gone on break with no compromise to end the partial government shutdown. This is the 3rd government shutdown TSA workers haven't experienced in just 6 months. But relief is coming to unpaid workers. CBS's Shauna Mizell has more details from Houston.
Congressional lawmakers left Capitol Hill overnight for an Easter recess, despite failing to reach an agreement to fund the Department of Homeland Security.
The yeas are 213 and the nays are 203. The resolution is adopted.
The House passed a short-term measure to fund every agency under DHS, but the legislation faces a bleak future in the Senate.
Mr. Speaker, we're here dealing with a partisan spending bill that the Senate has already indicated is dead on arrival.
House Republicans balked at a Senate-approved funding deal that would have funded most of DHS, except for Immigrations and Customs Enforcement.
We're not going to split apart 2 of the most important agencies in the government and leave them hanging like that. We just couldn't do it.
The partial government shutdown has caused major disruptions at airports across the country, including at Baltimore-Washington Airport, where lines snaked outside.
I don't know if we're going to make our flight or not.
TSA workers have gone without pay for a month now. In Atlanta, a community food bank is providing them with groceries.
One for the back seat.
TSA worker Pascual Contreras is wondering how he'll feed his family in Phoenix.
I have a total of $18 in one account, and I'm negative 100 and change on the other one.
Relief does appear to be in sight. President Trump signed an executive order to pay TSA workers. DHS says they could receive checks as early as Monday. Shauna Mizell,
Oh, okay, y'all. So you heard the update. There isn't anything. Well, hopefully they'll get paid as early as tomorrow. But like I said, it's still out up in the air. So Craftsman, I see you're asking these questions here. I was trying to respond to you in the chat here. Let me finish this up real quick. Of the military, it's people of color. So I'm not going to be able to so basically I can tell you the information, but I cannot process it for anyone. So what was stated is that the military population is 43% people of color, okay? And so in the leadership ranks, it's primarily white. So your question was that you think that because it's primarily white in the leadership ranks, that that they weren't underrepresented. How did you put that here? Let me see if I can find your comment. You feel that it was not overrepresented. So you're saying that having almost 100% white male in the leadership ranks, when you have 43% people of color in the military as a whole, that the white males are not overrepresented. From a mathematical standpoint, that doesn't make sense. But I understand that you may not see the point. I know you're looking more at the population of America opposed to looking at the distinct population of the military. So, yeah, so they're talking about in these articles and in these videos about military population and military leadership in the senior ranks. That's what they're talking about, sir. So if you're going beyond that, then you're not going to understand what they're talking about in that small demographic, if that makes sense. So we have Craftsman saying if you're 10% of the population, you shouldn't expect to have 50% of the positions. That's unreasonable. I agree. I agree 100%. Let's see. We have Casey McGreer saying Craftsman, why does percentages matter either way? Excellent question. We got Speak Up, Speak Out Now saying hello. Welcome to the check-in. Let's see. We have Kate McGreer saying you said objective. Opinions are subjective. This is an example of why I said you don't sound competent or knowledgeable. I didn't give an opinion. That's why you should not be here if you don't want to be. Let's see. Okay. Craftsman. I can't speak on the top 20 generals. I don't know. Okay. We got Deborah saying he is confused. I agree, ma'am. I agree. We have Craftsman saying, I will give you should have a couple of people of color as generals. Okay. I mean, when you look at the demographics of it all, you would think that, but that's why these smart analysts are making that assessment in these articles for that very reason. But okay, so we talked about the DHS shutdown and how they're going to probably get paid a little bit. So that's fine. And so we're going to move on to what's going on with Operation Epic Fury. Let's see, 1 second. We're going to move over into that realm. Okay, so as you guys may or may not have heard, the Iranians did strike several U.S. bases over in Saudi Arabia to the point where they're inhabitable from what they're reporting. So we're going to see what's going on with that. Let's get into it. One second. Let me go back.
Secretary Pete Hegseth is facing increased scrutiny over a highly unusual decision to block the promotion of 4 Army officers.
1 second, y'all.
Senior military officials tell the New York Times Congress
has gone on break with no compromise to end the partial government shutdown. This is the 3rd government shutdown TSA workers haven't experienced in just 6 months.
Sorry, y'all. We had to go back to TSA real quick.
CBS's Shauna Mizell has more details.
But it won't be long.
Congressional lawmakers left Capitol Hill overnight for an Easter recess, despite failing to reach an agreement to fund the Department of Homeland Security.
The yeas are 213 and the nays are 203. The resolution is adopted.
The House passed a short-term measure to fund every agency under DHS, but the legislation faces a bleak future in the Senate.
Mr. Speaker, we're here dealing with a partisan spending bill that the Senate has already indicated is dead on arrival.
House Republicans balked at a Senate-approved funding deal that would have funded most of DHS, except for Immigrations and Customs Enforcement.
We're not going to split apart 2 of the most important agencies in the government and leave them hanging like that. We just couldn't do it.
The partial government shutdown has caused major disruptions at airports across the country, including at Baltimore-Washington Airport, where lines snaked outside.
I don't know if we're going to make our flight or not.
TSA workers have gone without pay for a month now. In Atlanta, a community food bank is providing them with groceries.
One for the back seat.
TSA worker Pascual Contreras is wondering how he'll feed his family in Phoenix.
I have a total of $18 in one account, and I'm negative 100 and change on the other one.
Relief does appear to be in sight. President Trump signed an executive order to pay TSA workers. DHS says they could receive checks as early as Monday. Shauna Mizell,
I sure hope they get paid because I mean they haven't been paid and they missed at least a couple of checks now. And for him to be so transparent, saying he only has $18 in one account, and then he's negative about $100 in the other account. My goodness. Okay, y'all, we're gonna go ahead now into the strikes at the U.S. bases in Saudi Arabia. Let's get into it.
Today, as the war on Iran reaches its 1-month mark, American troops are still taking casualties. Several servicemen were injured, according to the Pentagon, after an Iranian missile and drone slammed into this American airbase in Saudi Arabia Friday, shown here before the attack. So far, more than 300 U.S. troops have been injured, but more soldiers are on the way amid talk of a U.S. ground invasion of Iran, including Kharg Island, a huge oil export facility that President Trump has repeatedly threatened to invade. U.S. officials have neither confirmed nor denied plans to put boots on the ground.
We are on or ahead of schedule in that operation and expect to conclude it at the appropriate time here in a matter of weeks, not months.
Meanwhile, President Trump hosted Saudi Arabian investors in Florida, where he sounded an optimistic note on talks to end the fighting and finally reopen the strategic Strait of Hormuz.
They have to open up the Strait of Hormuz. Excuse me for this. I'm so sorry. Such a terrible mistake.
Whatever you call it, Iran still holds the upper hand in the strait, where Iranian attacks and threats have nearly halted shipping, causing energy prices to spike and global markets to dip. The president still faulting U.S. allies for not helping America unblock the strait.
We would have always been there for them, but now, based on their actions, I guess we don't have to be, do we?
But here in the Middle East, talk of a deal seems remote. More than 3,000 people have been killed so far across the region, and Iran is still striking Israel. Israeli emergency officials said an Iranian missile killed one person last night in Tel Aviv. We warned the Iranian terror regime to stop the missile fire directed at Israel's civilian population, said Israel's defense minister. They will pay heavy and increasing prices for this war crime. But for now, Middle Eastern civilians, American troops, and global consumers are also footing the bill. And Laura, there's another sign of this war widening. The Houthis in Yemen, which are backed by the Iranians, have now joined the fight, firing a missile at the Israelis. The Israelis say they shot it down and that there were no casualties. Laura?
All right, Matt, Brad.
Interesting. So the Houthis are now participating in what's going on here. So let me ask you guys a question in the chat. 1 second. Let's see. With the Houthis participating, do you think that the war will end anytime soon? Anytime soon. Okay. I'm going to put, of course not, as a third option. Excuse me. Yes. So what I saw is that because they have, did so much damage on those U.S. bases over there, that they're having the military members stay in other places, and that Iran is saying, okay, well, if you're housing these American soldiers, then we're gonna, you're now up to be attacked as well. So they've been putting that out there. Okay. So yes, y'all, they have been striking U.S. bases. Now we're supposed to have this non-negotiation taking place. We covered it last week, where Trump is saying that Iran is begging for a deal, and they're saying, no, we're not begging for one, and we're not. So they're saying, well, we're in peace talk. We had a 15-point plan, and then they're saying, well, no, we didn't have one. All this negotiating, non-negotiating has been going on for the last week, right? And yet, as I mentioned last week, amidst all of that, with Pakistan kind of acting as an intermediary between the two, they're still striking, the U.S. bases, Israel, all the things. Now you got the Houthis involved. It doesn't appear to be any de-escalation happening right now. And on top of that, you had Trump give an extension of 10 days, so I think April the 6th, if I'm not mistaken. So okay, if we don't get a deal by this date, then he's gonna start going after their energy infrastructure. Okay, so all that's happening as well. So a lot going on here. I don't see this ending, anytime soon. They have so many military members that are U.S. boots on the ground now. They arrived over there. So it's a lot going on. Okay. Now, what do we have here in the chat? We have None of Your Business. Welcome to the check-in. Saying, he graduated second to the bottom of his class in college. They said, laugh aloud, do you still have your Christmas tree up? Yes, I do. It's right here. Yes, there it is. Right there. It brings me joy. It's gonna be up all year long, okay? But yes, so who exactly graduated second to the bottom of their class in college? I hadn't heard about that. Let's see. That's all I see here in the chat. Yes. So next up, we have remarks from Iran in regards to United States troops coming over there to the Middle East. And he has some interesting things to say. Let's get into that.
Gulf. Trump, the President of the United States, has repeatedly threatened Iran with a ground operation and the occupation of certain islands in the Persian Gulf. There is no doubt that the President of the United States has become a pawn of the Prime Minister of the Zionist regime in the war of aggression against Iran, driven by pressure from the terrorist organization Mossad, exploiting his background in the Epstein case. The President of the United States, known as the most dishonest president in the world and lacking any intellectual or discursive stability, is utterly untrustworthy. Unfortunately, America's leaders have delegated command of the armed forces to someone whose erratic positions and dangerous, wrong-headed decisions have plunged the U.S. military into a swamp of death. Trump, whose commanders and soldiers are grappling with death daily in the region due to their fear of being killed, have fled from destroyed bases and taken refuge in the service, population, and economic centers of regional countries, and of course will be targeted there as well. He and his senior commanders of the crumbling American army expect resistance from commanders and soldiers on battlefields thousands of kilometers away. Trump drums up a threatening topic one morning and backs down the same evening. He talks about negotiations one moment and decides to escalate the war a few hours later. This unstable and deceitful individual has inflicted immense damage on the people of America, Europe, and countries around the world, especially those in the Middle East. The President of the United States has proven that the only language he understands is the language of force. In response to Trump's recent threats of a ground operation or the occupation of any part of Iranian territory, which are nothing more than wishful thinking, we declare that the warriors of Islam have long awaited such actions. They will show that aggression and occupation lead only to the humiliating capture, dismemberment, and disappearance of the aggressors. American commanders and soldiers will become good food for the sharks of the Persian Gulf. It would be better if Trump and the leaders and commanders of the U.S. military studied the history of Iran once and learned a lesson from the valiant Iranian people's confrontations with aggressors throughout history, and did not lead their soldiers into captivity and death within the delusional circle of the unstable American president, nor turn the American people into mourners on a wide scale. The powerful Iranian armed forces will eagerly await the moment to obliterate your army if the American president's threat, an embodiment of delusion and lies, is carried out.
Yeah, why are they always using that term obliterate? I mean, I have heard the word obliterate, decimate so many times since this Operation Epic Fury has taken lead, honey. But yes, what do you guys think? How he said that now, we're considered untrustworthy, i.e., the American leadership. What do you guys think about that? I have a poll, and go ahead and respond to that, and I'll read the results in a little bit. We have some more people out here in the chat. Let's see what we got going on in the chat here. We have Victor saying Huiza. Welcome to the check-in. We have Johnny Vega saying, all right, I'm back. Okay. Thanks for returning. I appreciate you. Then we have None Your Business saying, I've been so upset since he got into office. I just give it to God now. I can't do anything. I don't have any control over this other than protesting. That's true. None of us do. All we can do is, if you feel a certain kind of way when it's time for the midterm elections, to vote the way you need to vote. That's all one can do at this point. And pray for the soldiers that are having to go over there. They don't have a choice in the matter at this stage. We have craftsmen saying eventually they'll run out of food and water and everything they'll have. So what I'm kind of concerned about is for those ships that are over there at the Strait of Hormuz that have been kind of stuck there for weeks. Like, how are they able to sustain? Because I'm sure they didn't think they're going to be stuck over there for that long period of time. Okay, so I wonder how are they coping with things? Being they're like a sitting duck essentially. Okay, because as you guys know, Iran has that Strait of Hormuz, quote unquote, blocked to United States and allies, but open to those who are supporters of the Iranian regime, if you will. Okay, if you're here hanging out, please consider liking the live stream. Push me on to the algorithm. If you like the content, if you like the vibe, please subscribe. Okay. So we have Johnny Vega saying they would say things like that when their backs are on the ropes. Who are we talking about, Johnny Vega? He also said, what you gonna do though if you're feeling froggy? Leap. True. We have Bogdan Jaworek saying Black Horror Story. Then we have Stanley saying, or a city duck. Okay, or a city duck. Okay, I'm not getting what you mean. Or a city duck. Okay. Craftsman is saying you're barking ain't scaring nobody. Understood. Okay. So, what we have next going on, so we heard from the Iranian military representative, and they're basically saying, like, look, if you guys come over here, we got something for you. That's what he's saying over here, okay? And then he made the point of saying that they're going to be shark food. That was a bit much, but I understand when you're in the middle of a war, you're going to speak how you want to speak, right? We're not going to talk about being polite. Okay. So what we're going to move into next is that they now have, several, as you guys have heard, they have had a ship heading out that way for like the last couple of weeks. They've sent over the 82nd mission over there. They've sent out other troops. So they are, bringing more U.S. troops to the Middle East. And Trump is saying that they're not planning on doing any type of ground action. But when you hear in the news that you have all these people coming there, you kind of think, well, maybe they're going to prepare for a ground operation in the event that something might need to occur. Okay, as we just stated here in the poll, they don't have any trust in the United States because they've been, negotiating a couple times since last summer, and during negotiation they got attacked. So trust is eroded. It has to be rebuilt, right? So they're seeing what the U.S. is doing, and they are planning accordingly. Like I told you guys last week, I would not be surprised if they're not using all their military ammunition right now because they're waiting to use something when the military forces arrive in the Middle East region. Okay, they're not going to sit there and use up everything before the ground situation occurs. That's just my personal opinion, and we'll go with that. Okay, so we're going to look at now Pentagon sending folks over there, building up their troop counts in the Middle East region. Let's get into it.
Pentagon reportedly preparing for weeks-long operations in Iran as 3,500 American troops are now on the ground in the Middle East.
It comes as we learn more about a fallen IDF soldier from Connecticut.
Trey Yingst is live in Tel Aviv with the latest. Good morning, Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. After 4 weeks of war in the Middle East, the conflict grinds on. Reports indicate the United States is preparing for a possible ground operation into Iran that would include thousands of U.S. service members. We do know the USS Tripoli, manned with more than 3,500 troops, including 2,500 Marines, arrived in the CENTCOM area of operation this weekend. If an operation is ordered to seize Iranian oil facilities or enriched uranium, it's expected that both special forces and conventional forces would be used. This comes as the United States and Israel launched a series of strikes against Iranian military infrastructure over the weekend, including hitting Iran's nuclear development facilities.
In Operation Rising Lion, we hit very hard the entire chain of nuclear production in Iran. We hit everything from the production capabilities in the factories, all the components, to the centrifuges and beams, and so on. The entire production chain was hit. It was affected, it was delayed, but it was not completely destroyed.
With the Israelis looking east, they're also looking north, where early Saturday, an IDF soldier from Connecticut was killed in southern Lebanon by a Hezbollah rocket. His name was Moshe Katz, and he was 22 years old. A number of other soldiers also wounded in that same attack. The war has also expanded in the past 24 hours to the south. The Israelis now not just fighting Hezbollah in southern Lebanon and the Iranians, but also the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen, who launched both a cruise and ballistic missile toward Israel over the weekend. Guys?
All right. Thank you, Trey.
Okay. So what do you guys think about that? With the Pentagon sending more troops over there. What are your thoughts about that? We have Johnny Baker here saying, STEMFashionista, you're very pretty. I don't really holler at black girls, but you are very kind. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. We got Death Knows 9248 saying it's way too early for a Christmas tree. Well, look at it differently. I never took it down from last year. So it's going to be up all year round, bringing me joy. Yes. We have Johnny Baker saying, I wouldn't trust anyone that wishes death upon me or my business. Exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, the Iranians are not crazy. They see that the U.S. is, bringing troops over, and they are planning accordingly. So I don't think that I need to say anything more than that, right? So what we have now is we have the Houthis. They have entered the Iran war, but Israel deterred their missile attack. But with them entering the war, that signals to me more escalation, not de-escalation. Okay, let's see what they got going on with that.
Now to the Middle East. Tonight, the Iran-backed militant group, the Houthis, in Yemen entered the widening conflict. They launched an unsuccessful missile attack on Israel. 2,500 American Marines arrived in the region today. They're on board with the USS Tripoli, along with 2,500 sailors. CBS's Holly Williams is in Tel Aviv with more on that part of the story. Holly.
Good evening, Jerika. We have more American casualties in a war that's now a month old. 10 American service members were injured yesterday by an Iranian strike on a base in Saudi Arabia, according to U.S. officials. 2 of them very seriously.
They are negotiating. They're begging to make a deal.
President Trump repeated his claim last night that Iran's leaders are eager to negotiate an end to the war. But Iran has said it's rejected an American ceasefire plan and won't negotiate. Even as the country's pummeled by American and Israeli airstrikes, Iran's leaders are wielding an economic weapon that gives them bargaining power. With strikes and the threat of mines, Iran has effectively paralyzed traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, which normally carries around 20% of the world's oil. It's sent energy prices soaring and piled pressure on Trump to end the war. If the president can't reach a deal with Iran, he could stop the war unilaterally. But that would leave the Iranian regime with around 1,000 pounds of uranium enriched to 60% and the ability to rebuild its nuclear and missile programs.
We are not going to give it up, not going to give we don't have a flexibility here.
Retired General Yaakov Amadror is Israel's former national security advisor.
President Trump is under a lot of pressure to end the war. If the war ends soon, will that be too soon from Israel's perspective?
if the enriched uranium will not be taken out in the agreement that will be reached between the Americans and the Iranians, the answer is yes.
Jerika, Germany's foreign minister said that he expects representatives from Iran and the US to meet for face-to-face talks in Pakistan in the very near future.
Okay, so we talked last week about Israel being concerned that Trump will unilaterally end the war without their interests being taken into consideration. Um, hmm, what do you guys think about that? Do you think that he would do that? I mean, at this point, you need to take into consideration the amount of lives for your country that are being at stake here. As of today, there were 303 American soldiers wounded and 13 that's been killed thus far. When the Saudi Arabia U.S. bases got hit recently this weekend, that increased the number to 303 wounded. Okay, so now when you were just doing air defense, you don't have as many American soldiers possibly in harm's way, if you will. However, now with boots on the ground, that number is going to go up. Okay, now the Iranians have already said that Trump cannot determine when the war is going to end. They're going to determine that. That's what they said. Y'all remember that? So it's like, okay, so even if Trump decided to end everything, which he did say last week, okay, we're not going to attack any more of their energy infrastructure and things like that, oil infrastructure. Guess what? Iran was still, they just bombed Saudi Arabia. They bombed, over there in Israel. They're still doing their thing. Okay. And during this time, because they're not going to allow Trump to tell them what they're going to do. That's my opinion there. Okay. Also, yeah, they feel like they're in a position of power because guess what? They have control of the Strait of Hormuz right now. They are creating havoc, if you will, with the global economy. I went past the gas station the other day. Gas is $4 for regular. Yes. So we're seeing these impacts. You have 303 American soldiers wounded, 13 killed, numerous individuals wounded and harmed over there in Israel, Iran, all of that. A lot of human life that's gone here. Okay, you have all that, and we're seeing the cost at the pump here. We talked last week about the farmers, how they can't get their fertilizer, so we're going to see issues probably with food in the coming months. They can't get this fertilizer. It's a big chain reaction. Okay, so that's happening with this shit of Hormuz. And then as we discussed, they were asking Pete Hegseth, that reporter did, like, hey sir, why did you guys not think about them locking down Strait of Hormuz? Which he did say, well, we did consider it, and we're doing things in a strategic way. It's essentially what he said. But to other people on the outside looking in, it doesn't appear to be strategic. Okay, what do you guys think about that? But yeah, it's a lot going on with that Strait of Hormuz, and they know they have a power piece here, and they are playing it to the fullest. They allowed so many boats to go through, as we discussed last week. Trump said that he got a big gift, and that's how he knows he's operating and negotiating with the right people, because he said that they allow 8 to 10 boats to pass through the strait. Okay, that was the big gift that Trump was talking about at his cabinet meeting last week. Remember that? So with so many people that have passed away with the Ayatollah, we haven't seen the Ayatollah's the new Ayatollah. They said he got harmed. Haven't seen him. They just had somebody read a message of his. Don't know who they're really negotiating with, but Trump says the right people. They let 10 boats go through. That's the right people, y'all. And he will feel it in his bones when it's time to end this thing. So it's a lot going on here, okay? Yes. So what we got here in the chat, we have Louis, saying boots on the ground, where them fans at. Exactly. If you're here hanging out, like the live stream, push me in the algorithm. Also consider subscribing, support the channel. It is free. Thank you for being here. Yes. We got Indiana Barella talking about, hi, I'm back. Welcome. Glad you're back. We have Craftsman saying, with no air support, they're sitting ducks. That's true. Craftsman also saying, I bet you anything, we're only going to take that island and the straits. Okay. Johnny Baker is saying, air superiority should play out like Desert Storm. How did it play out in Desert Storm? Then we have Lou, and it, saying, is Clark Island going to be the new Hamburger Hill? What is the Hamburger Hill? Get me up to speed on that. Then we have Craftsman saying, I've never seen so much misinformation in my life. Who are you telling, sir? Like I said, the negotiation. One person saying we're negotiation, one person saying that we're not. They said we got a 15-point plan. They said, "Oh no, we don't have a 15-point plan." That's what the press secretary said. Well, there's some truth to it, elements of truth. Then they decided at the cabinet meeting last week, oh yeah, we do have a 15-point plan. I'm like, okay, it's a lot going on here. It's hard to keep up. Okay, so we have Craftsman saying, okay, I said that one already. We got Johnny saying, "Oh, liberate! Don't forget, liberate losing weak countries that no longer have our backs." Johnny Vegas said it should play out just like Desert Storm. Okay. All right. So we're gonna take a look at this retired. Before I go, let me see this. Craftsman is saying they are already moving a large number of fast boats into the strait. They're not going to do it with some big carrier. Gotcha. Yeah, that it would take forever. And when I look up information about that strait, it's like you only have it so it's very narrow. So it's gonna be hard to get something big through there. Let alone they're talking about, oh, what Trump said, you guys go ahead on through the strait and we'll protect you as you go through the strait. You have a lot of room there. Okay. Then they were saying they put landmines in the strait. So it's like those people say, we're not finna send our cargo through there even if you are going to provide insurance. Okay, they're not doing it because they don't you got human life on those boats, and then those boats are very expensive. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and get into a retired Navy SEAL's perspective regarding what's going on with the Houthis joining into this Operation Epic Fury situation. Let's go.
Joining us now, Wisconsin Congressman, former Navy SEAL Derek Van Orden of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, great to see you. Your thoughts about where we're at with this conflict and the Houthi threat?
Well, Brian, the Houthis should not be able to influence the global economy. They simply should not be able to do so. They've been bombed into submission previously. If they act up again, they will be bombed back into submission. So what the world needs to know and what American citizens need to know is that how incredible our military is, and the fact that they have degraded the Iranian radical Muslim imams' ability to affect the region negatively. And they're simply not telling the story of how badly this regime is doing because they challenged the United States. And they declared war on us 47 years ago, and Donald J. Trump is finishing this war. He has not started a new one.
I know the IDF was asked not to take out the foreign minister who they had in their crosshairs, as well as the speaker, because he says these are the people we're negotiating with. Do you back up the decision not to kill them?
Well, you got to talk to somebody. And, their bench is empty right about now. So it's good to have a known entity that you can speak to. Now, granted, I don't trust these guys as far as I can throw them. But it's time to start negotiating, and Donald J. Trump has started negotiating, and everybody lied about it. They said that didn't happen. CNN, for instance, which is another trash network, they were taking the word of the Iranian regime. They actually played like 4 minutes unedited from Iran television station. That would be like Winston Churchill allowing Joseph Goebbels to broadcast on the radio during World War II. It's just absolutely foolish, and they're rooting against the United States of America. And there's something else I'd like to bring up. Right? It's not just the mainstream media. There's a whole pile of former general officers and flag officers who are actually rooting for the Iranian regime. And it's shameful. Now you know who these people really are and how they have subverted President Trump during his first administration and how they're trying to subvert him now when they're civilians. It's shameful.
And it's not unpredictable because they're probably frustrated they didn't have a chance to take on our number one enemy for the last 47 years, who have killed 603 of our guys during the Iraqi insurgency and 1,000 more at least wounded during that time, killed 200 plus Marines. This has happened. No actions taken to this president. Lastly, The Economist writes a column, 175 years this magazine's been around, Advantage Iran. The New York Post came out with their editorial taking on that headline. But that's what the world sees. What is your reaction to that?
My reaction to that is they have boldly crossed from a news organization into a propaganda wing for the radical Muslim imams. And it's absolutely unconscionable that these allegedly respectable news organizations would be rooting for the folks that we have been fighting against for 47 years.
Gotcha. Congressman, thanks so much for your time.
Okay. So he feels that I guess certain news stations are rooting for Iran as well as some of the retired military folks. What do you guys think about that? I think that you have some people who have their own opinion about what they're seeing in this news. Let me see. We have Johnny Baker saying he just said some guy was allowed to broadcast over radio. That's what's giving our element of surprise away to our enemies. Okay. Okay, Johnny. I wasn't tracking that, but okay, that makes sense. Because I mean, with everything being discussed on this news on this internet here, it's like, yeah, they're watching like we're watching, they're seeing what's being projected, you know. We got Lou, you know what, saying is the Strait of Hormuz going to be the pass of Thermopylae? Now I looked up Thermopylae because I'm like, what is that? So it says that Thermopylae is a narrow coastal pass in Greece, 85 miles northwest of Athens. Strategic importance: the pass was a critical route from northern to central Greece, and that the Battle of 480 BC, King Leonidas led roughly 7,000 Greeks against an estimated 120 to 300,000 Persian troops. The Greeks held the pass for 2 full days. Okay, so the legacy is that while tactical loss for the Greeks, it provided time for Greek forces to prepare for subsequent victories at Salamis and Plataea. So maybe you own to something. We'll see. We have Craftsman saying, okay, sorry, they're moving small, fast boats with rocket machine guns attached to them into the strait to open it. Okay. Let's see. We have Johnny Vegas saying Greek ocean route for trade. Okay. Got you. And then we have Lou, you know it, saying 47-year war. Clearly, I'm missing a campaign badge on my ribbon rack. I guess I was out of uniform. Lord, okay. So what do we have here in the poll? I needed to populate. But yeah, so that's what he's saying regarding the news sources. And I guess he feels like they're not supporting what's going on out of the administration. But you know, we'll go from there. What else do we have here? Okay, Johnny Vega was saying Greek. Okay. Is there anything else that I may have missed? Not yet. Okay, so we're now going to sit back and take a look at what's been happening with Operation Epic Fury as a whole. And let's get into that, y'all. Lots of movement.
And when you listen to officials, whether it is the president himself posting on Truth Social or it's Hegseth when he rants about what's happening in Iran, you would think that we have obliterated, decimated, that we're close to achieving objectives here. At the same time, we have reporting from Reuters. The U.S. can only confirm that about a third of Iran's missile arsenal has been destroyed. And then...
Okay, y'all, let me just pause here. They just said that they can only confirm that a third of their missile stash has been destroyed. And we've seen on several press conferences that they're saying that they don't have any more missiles. They're pretty much depleted, but yet they're still, using those missiles. They're saying, oh, well, China is providing them, weaponry, all these things, but they're saying they can only confirm a third of their supply destroyed. Okay, that's the key point to note. Let's keep going.
New York Times, that they are citing multiple officials in this reporting that many of the 13 military bases in the region used by American troops are all but uninhabitable now. What does that signal to you?
Well, it signals a few things. On one hand, the Iranian government and its preparation for this war seems to have been real. Unlike previous attempts in the Middle East, you think of the Iraq War in 2003, the U.S. had unbelievable military success. in the first couple of weeks of that war, completely destroyed the Iraqi army, made its way to Baghdad almost unchallenged. And certainly here the U.S. has, with Israel, established air dominance, something that the Iranians had always conceded was not going to be a strong part of their defensive game, if you will, to be able to counter any American-Israeli air assault. But what Iran has been able to do, 28 days or so, 29 days into this war, is be able to continue to fire onto all of its Arab neighbors, as well as Israel and American military installations, every single day of this war. And that is certainly a significant part of their defense strategy.
Let me pause right there. So one thing that they did say when we were talking about the 15-point peace plan and how Iran says, oh, no. We reject that, because what they said is they wanted U.S. forces to be removed from the Middle East, okay? And like they just pointed out here, that every day they've been shooting missiles at all these U.S. bases, okay? So if you have no base, you have nowhere to go, right? So they are trying to strategically advance what they are hoping to happen as part of potential negotiations, which is they do not want any U.S. presence over there in the Middle East, okay? Note that.
The Iranians had been preparing for what they saw last summer, which was a decapitation strike, a strike in which the upper echelons of both the regime, the government, as well as the military brass would be wiped out. And they had prepared for this with a strategy that they identified as the Mosaic defense, which is basically divide Iran into 31 different units, 31 different governorates or provinces, and each one of those governorates had its own command and control structure in which they were ordered to immediately fire on targets if the regime's upper echelon was attacked, as we saw on February 28th when the U.S. and Israel carried out the strike on Khamenei. What has emerged over the course of the last month of these attacks is that Iran has been very diligent in the way it continues to fight back against these regimes, against the governments in the Middle East as well as Israel. They've been able to match tit for tat, meaning when the U.S. and Israel carry out a strike against a desalination plant or an oil refinery, the Iranians are able to strike back in kind against similar facilities across the region. And in large part, it seems, according to reporting from the New York Times and others, because they're able to get some accurate pinpointing GPS locations from the Russians, which I think is not getting as much attention as it should be throughout this war. It is something that U.S. officials have been concerned about, but clearly has been an advantage to the Iranians.
Well, Eamon, in fact, we actually had some members of Congress touring Russian members of parliament around D.C. this week at a time when the reporting, credible reporting, suggests they are putting American men and women's lives in danger. We also just had Inzamam Rashid on not that long ago in the last hour from Dubai, describing Iranians reacting to Israel hitting nuclear power sites, water treatment sites there, and basically saying exactly what you spelled out there, which is that they may do devastating damage to partners in the Gulf. Susan, politically, what could all of this mean for us? I mean, it seems like we're on the brink of something, as the general said, very dangerous. At the same time, here domestically, we have reporting to our colleague, Jake Traylor here, that the president is bored right now with the war. How can those things all be true at once?
Yeah, well, it does appear that this was a hastily launched and perhaps ill-considered plan that the United States had in terms of its entry into the war and the conflict alongside Israel. Trump has repeatedly said in recent days, in fact, I really thought this was notable, he's confirmed that the United States did not expect Iran to hit back at neighboring countries in the Gulf, to hit back at civilian targets. He said that not once, but multiple times. I think that's really remarkable, especially given that Iran had repeatedly said that that was a possibility, number one. Number two, I'm just frankly blown away at the idea that the Strait of Hormuz being closed was not more carefully considered as an option by the Trump administration. And despite a lot of the bluster, what we've seen, given that that has been the case for a couple of weeks now, and the U.S. has not had an effective strategy for reopening it, what that suggests is that they didn't have a viable plan for what to do if Iran went in this very, very obvious direction. To your question of how does this end and what is the political fallout, that depends on how long it goes and how much pain is inflicted on the global economy as well as not just on the American economy. And given that question, I think what we're seeing is Trump still spinning his wheels, casting about to reopen the strait, and nothing so far has emerged short of this threatened possibility of American boots on the ground that might actually accomplish it. The Pakistani foreign minister, the Pakistanis have been asked to mediate in recent days. I thought he came out with a point that's really worth underscoring for your viewers. What is the strategic goal of the Americans right now? He was asked. It looks to him like the strategic goal is reopening the Strait of Hormuz, which of course wouldn't have been closed if we hadn't launched the war in the first place. It's hard to portray that even for someone who casually inverts the truth like Donald Trump. It's really hard to portray that as a victory. And so we can't calculate the cost yet because we don't know how much longer it's going to go on for Iran to have the world economy in a chokehold.
Eamon, you know this region well. You've reported from so much of the Gulf. And I'm curious in your conversations, but also just your personal observations, what you think this could do to our relationships in the region long term. If our own partners, as they watch all this unfold, can barely figure out what our objectives are. And if, I guess, the new objective is to get us back to what the status quo was just a couple weeks ago.
Look, I've been speaking to a lot of officials across the GCC, and there is definitely a divide there. If you look, for example, yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, the ambassador of the United Arab Emirates, as well as other ministers, high-ranking ministers who are here in the U.S., they've talked about the importance of maintaining the U.S. relationship and cooperation going forward. They are also encouraging the United States to fix what it broke, which is this: there was a situation in the Middle East where at least there wasn't missiles raining down on the entire GCC and the global economy was still functioning. All of that now has been shattered. The sense of security has been shattered. And so there is a push by some within the GCC for the Americans to finish the job. What does that actually mean? Does that mean regime change? Does that mean boots on the ground? Does that mean getting the situation back to a status quo where Iran and its Arab neighbors live with this kind of de facto respect and not a state of war? That's unclear. But there are also other GCC countries who feel very disappointed with what the United States has done. They have been investing in this relationship with President Trump and the Americans for decades in building a security umbrella. That has, for the large part, withheld the Iranian missile and drone strikes, but it is not something that can be sustained forever. And as a result of that, they want the United States to engage in a diplomatic solution that ends this war and brings about a stability to the region that allows for long-term prosperity. I think what they're most frustrated about is that the president started this war without as much giving them any indication that it's going to happen or preparation. And even though they told Iran that they will not allow the U.S. to participate on these strikes or use their territory to participate in these strikes, the Iranians did not take that into consideration. And so going forward, you're going to have a situation where Iran is either emboldened, even if it has been militarily weakened, but it is emboldened and willing to lash out against its neighbors, or they're going to have a country that potentially collapses if this war continues to go on, in which case you're going to have a failed state producing a refugee crisis run by a host of different militias and factions and sectarian ideologies that could bleed into the GCC. And so they're watching this moment very carefully, very nervous, and I have to say, not with a lot of confidence in the American leadership that they're going to be making a decision that has their best interest at heart.
But let me go back and endorse a.
Let me say something real quick. So they made a comment about what happened before the war. I highly doubt, and Iran has said they're not going to go back to how things were before this Operation Epic Fury kicked off. So if they're expecting for Iran to just forget about what has happened, obtain some reparations and all that, that's not happening. So Iran has shown themselves here to be a formidable force, if you will, and they're going to keep that going. So it's not going to be, well, we're just going to open the strait and let anybody come through. It's not going to be that no more, okay? Like they said, they're only going to allow people that they consider to be allies to come through that strait. So I don't know if there's a diplomatic solution for this. I know that in the 15-point plan, they were wanting for Iran to not be able to have a nuclear weapon, if you will, and they feel they should be able to have one. Okay, so I don't know if they're going to be able to get past that. They want the U.S. to not be over there on those bases in the Middle East. I'm not sure if they're going to concede to that. So it's a lot to be determined here. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and finish this out.
and Eamon made. Our remaining objectives in the Gulf War are stop the nuclear program and open the Gulf of Hormuz. Each of them are in danger. You cannot stop a nuclear weapons program unless you have inspectors on the ground.
True.
With robust rules of investigation. That's not going to happen under the current approach by the United States or Israel. The second thing you got to do is you got to open the Gulf of Hormuz. I think the Iranians can outlast us, and no U.S. Navy warfighting vessel wants to be in the Persian Gulf, shallow water, restricted maneuver space, and subject to instant attack by mini subs, floating naval mines, cruise ballistic missiles. It's just a nightmare of an operation. So the whole notion of forcing passage, even if the NATO allies joined us, is really tenuous. This is probably not going to work. We have to have a diplomatic solution.
Okay, y'all. So what do you guys think? Do you think they're going to be able to end this war with a diplomatic solution, or do you think they're going to have to just obliterate and decimate, as Trump and these Iranian reps have been saying? What do you guys think about that? Boy, I tell you, it's a lot going on. And Craftsman just said in the chat that the U.S. just knocked out power in Tehran. They're definitely going to retaliate. That's what they do. So I have no doubt in my body that they're not going to just be like, okay, well, you know, they're not power. We're not going to do anything. They're going to do something. I believe that. Okay. We have Lou asking, have we, the U.S., fallen into an escalation trap, or no? We got this. America, F yeah. I think there is an escalation trap at play here because, I mean, yes, Trump said, okay, we're not going to attack your property, but Iran said, okay, that's fine, but we're going to still attack things over here. So that's what they're doing. Okay. So, yeah, I think that we're at a point now where you have people trying to top the other person. It's, I don't know how they're going to get to a exit strategy or exit ramp from this. I know Pakistan is trying to be a mediator. So shout out to them for trying. And they're hoping to have the US and, and Iran come to some type of agreement, some type of meeting. I guess we'll see, how that will play out. And, we're gonna just follow this story as we go along. Let me see here. I did ask you guys a question about, do you think the president is bored with the war? 50% said yes, 50% said no. Okay. And let's see what else we got here. I said, has the U.S. fallen into the escalation trap? 100% said, heck yeah. Okay, we have Blip in the house. Welcome to the check-in. Blip is saying, I'd vote for a third term. I think you're speaking about voting for Trump for a third term. I think they're projecting that maybe it'll be JD Vance and maybe Rubio, perhaps. That might be the Republican Party candidates, but who knows at this stage? I just happened to see that somewhere. We have Lou, saying agreed. The P Gulf would be a death trap. Okay, let's see who he is responding to. Okay. Then we have Sherry here saying agree and heck yeah. Welcome to the live stream, is Sherry. So y'all, we have talked about what's going on with Operation Epic Fury as of today. Things are happening 24/7. Okay. We talked primarily about Pete Hegseth removing those officers from that one-star general list and whether that was allowed. We're gonna keep a close tab on that. I would like to see what's decided and what does the Senate do when they get back from recess. Okay, we had a brief update on what's going on with the TSA and their shutdown. Well, that's DHS shutdown, but they're trying to get the TSA folks paid. About 500 people have quit their job at TSA. And they're saying it takes like maybe 6 months to do training to be a TSA agent. They have the ICE folks out there, but they are only helping out with passing out water, lines, things like that. They can't run the machines and do things that TSA agents actually do. So them being there, it's like, okay, they're there, but okay, they can't replace the TSA agents. And you've lost 500 workers who were skilled, because guess what? We have been furloughed, at least them, 3 times since October 1st. So you can't sustain a household when every couple months you're not getting paid. And it's like, okay, well, you'll get back pay, but people need their money. Okay. So I can understand why they left and got another job somewhere else, because you got to take care of your bills. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, y'all, I'll be back tomorrow at 7:15 p.m. Eastern time. If you haven't done so, please like the live stream, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, and I will see you guys on tomorrow night. Have a blessed Sunday night and a awesome Monday. Talk to you soon.